Greg Stubbe to the dais for the first time since becoming a member of this committee. As many of you may know, Greg had a terrible accident earlier this year and was on the mend for some time. And as an example of Greg's passion for this committee and hard work, he was out of the hospital just a few days calling me saying, "Can I still get on my subcommittees? Can you help me get on the right subcommittees?" while he was laying with a neck brace and everything else. But earlier this week, we were at the Republican retreat, and I don't think that there was a dry eye in the room whenever Greg gave his testimony of the miracle that happened that day with Representative Vern Buchanan's staffer that actually saw him at the accident and was able to call the paramedics, and how everything worked right. It was an amazing, amazing story. And I know I speak for everyone in this room, Greg. I welcome you to the Ways and Means Committee, and we are glad you're home. Thank you. And I'd like to recognize Mr. Nill as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're delighted you're back. And I want to say that the Democrats caucused, and we unanimously wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody. It's weird to be on a committee for 2 months and not step foot in the actual room, but this is my first week back, and I want to thank the chairman for his understanding and our leadership that was very understanding of me going through the process to heal. And I want to thank my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Quite a few of you reached out to me during that time, and that was a blessing. And it shows that we're all human up here, and we're all up here to do what we've been called to do. So I want to thank you, and I look forward to serving. I look forward to serving with you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Stubbe. We will now proceed to the questions and answer session, and I will begin. As you know, the Mexican government is violating the terms of USMCA by essentially banning U.S.-grown corn from Mexico's market. Mexico is America's second largest export market for corn. I recently led a bipartisan delegation to Mexico last week where we met with the president of Mexico and delivered the message that Mexico must uphold its USMCA obligations. USTR has taken a critical step by initiating technical consultations with the Mexican government. Effective enforcement is required to protect American workers and farmers, and I will insist on moving forward with dispute settlement if our concerns are not addressed. What are the next steps the administration is prepared to take to ensure enforcement of USMCA in this matter?
Chairman Smith, thank you for your very strong voice and leadership on this issue. The issues here are really critical to the integration of our economies and the longstanding and fruitful partnership in terms of agricultural trade between the United States and Mexico and Canada as well. We requested technical consultations, as you referenced. We are going through a pretty intensive process of our teams sitting down, USTR, with USDA, as well as the Mexican teams. We are looking forward to more helpful clarifications from the Mexican side on exactly how the decree will work and what will be impacted by it. Of course, all of the tools in the USMCA are there for a reason, and we stand ready to make use of those tools to help us to resolve this issue. It's not just a matter of USMCA rules, it is also truly a matter of a vision for our shared prosperity across North America. And the biotechnology, agricultural trade, the corn trade in particular, has been a very important part of the strength of our integrated agricultural markets.
Last week, our delegation also visited Ecuador and Guyana because U.S. engagement in Latin America is vital to securing key supply chains and countering China's influence in that region as well. China is aggressively investing in Latin American countries to spread its influence just as it has done elsewhere in the world. While the United States under this administration has been sitting on the sidelines in a lot of degrees, over 2 years into the administration, we have yet to see a comprehensive strategy on China. What is the administration's plan for a more proactive, aggressive strategy to counter China, not just in Latin America, but globally?
Well, Chairman Smith, as you know, China is the second largest economy in the world, the relationship between the United States and China is one of profound consequence, not just to each of us and our economies and our workers and businesses, but to everyone's in the world at this point for the global economy. I would direct your attention to many of the actions the administration has taken across the board with respect to standing up to Chinese challenges. The PRC practices and policies in the economic area are some of the most, again, important ones for us to take on, but to take on deliberately, strategically, thoughtfully, with a focus on ensuring that realigning our competitive footing with China and the PRC is ultimately effective. So I want to assure you that every day that I am at work as the U.S. Trade Representative, I am in one way or the other working on China issues, either directly or indirectly, as you've noted. I will continue to work closely with you and keep you apprised with respect to specific actions that we may take in the trade lane especially.
Thank you. The committee still has not seen the final product of USTR's China review, and is still guessing when it comes to the administration's views on several policies established under the Trump administration. President Trump's Phase 1 agreement entered into force over 3 years ago, yet this committee has yet to see a full scorecard of China's compliance with the agreement, including on issues related to IP theft and forced tech transfer. When do you think we could see a report on China's compliance?
So I think that you will have seen conclusions from our own analysis in the speech that I gave in October of 2021 in terms of our internal review of the U.S. approach to the China economic relationship over the course of the past several administrations. In terms of, I take your question to be in terms of next steps, specifically with respect to Phase 1. On this one, let me again commit to staying in close touch with you. This is very much in our sights and something that we spend a lot of time working on.
Thank you. U.S. imports from China currently enjoy most favored nation status due to permanent normal trade relations legislation for China that was passed in 2000 and remain in place today. I recognize that you have maintained the Section 301 tariffs that President Trump imposed, but China otherwise gets preferential treatment when it comes to trade, including qualifying for Column 1 in our harmonized tariff schedule. Given China's aggressive and hostile approach toward the United States, I think it's important that we evaluate all aspects of our relationship, including trade. In addition to our Section 301 tariffs, are there available trade tools you see to hold China accountable?
Chairman Smith, I think that there are a lot of tools that we have been developing over time, and I continue to believe that with respect to our enforcement tools, there are a lot of updates and there's a lot of new tools that we can develop to ensure that this toolbox of enforcement in trade can keep pace with the times. A lot of our enforcement authorities and our statutes date back to 1974, 1988, and probably the most recent ones, 2002. Those are the most significant contributions to the trade toolbox. I think it's high time, if you think about how different the world economy is today from even the early 2000s, that we revisit how we can be most effective in competing in a very different world economy, something that I would be very interested in working with you on.
As you know, child and forced labor abuses are rampant in the production of cobalt and other critical minerals, including in China and the Democratic Republic of Congo. No American taxpayer dollars should fund these horrific practices. Yet the administration is facilitating them through its Green New Deal agenda. At the same time, U.S. cobalt mining has essentially been taken offline in the United States. Is this administration concerned that as it shutters domestic development of cobalt, its new and generous so-called green taxpayer handouts are going to activities that rely on critical minerals extracted through forced labor and child labor?
So Chairman Smith, I think that you are highlighting a particular problem that also goes back to remarks that you made in your opening relating to critical supply chains and the need for us to have more supply chains and more resilient supply chains. In this area in particular, and I think across the board in terms of trade, we are today in 2023 asking questions that we're not used to asking previously. We now want to know specifically where the links in the supply chain are, who is producing in that supply chain, and how they are producing. This means that our approach to trade needs to evolve. And on critical minerals in particular, I think that what we are doing with respect to the Inflation Reduction Act, how we are thinking about our critical supply chains is changing very quickly. It's evolving, and this is an area as well that I would love to work with you and this committee on in terms of ensuring that the path for economic development for not just the United States, but for the rest of the world, and in particular, those who have systems like ours and values like ours, can continue to be strong and can continue to be sustainable.
Will the so-called critical minerals free trade agreements you are pursuing require Japan and the EU to ban the importation of minerals produced with forced labor before their companies' cars are eligible to receive the tax credits?
So Japan and the EU have been two of our strongest partners in working on the eradication of forced labor actually in all global supply chains. So I am very confident that wherever we may land with those two partners, that this part of our agenda will continue to be strong and apply.
I now recognize the distinguished member from Massachusetts, Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Ambassador, in your testimony,